Good evening. On behalf of the USBGF Board of Directors and our staff, I'd like to welcome you to the 10th Annual Hall of Fame Awards Dinner and Awards Presentation. I'm really delighted to see a room full of people. We really appreciate your support and participation. And I'd like to begin by thanking Lynn Ehrlich for a fabulous organization of this. This is the nicest venue I've been to for a Hall of Fame dinner. This is just gorgeous, Lynn, so thanks for your work. I don't think people really appreciate, many people don't appreciate all the work that goes into putting on an event like this, both the ABT event and then a dinner like this. It's just a tremendous amount of work. And to top it off, I've been told that Lynn this weekend is hosting the largest ABT tournament in ABT history. I understand that she has 297 participants in this event. So that's no small amount of work to organize this. So thanks very much, Lynn. I'm going to apologize in advance for reading off notes. If I don't, I'm likely to wander meaninglessly through comments that don't matter to anyone. And I'm also likely to forget what I'm supposed to talk about. So forgive me. Tonight we're going to recognize the accomplishments of some remarkable backgammon players, including the top 10 point leaders from the 2023 USBGF Online Masters Points Race, the top 10 ABT Live Tournament points winners, and the top 10 23 ABT Intermediate and Advanced winners. Not sure where I should put this in the program, so I think I'll put it right now. I'd also like to congratulate Tiffany Van, who came in first in the recent 2023 USBGF Women's Online National Championship. Layla came in second, and Karen Davis and Antoinette Marie Williams finished third and fourth, so congratulations. So our program will continue after dinner. The U.S. Backgammon Federation mission statement reads, the U.S. Backgammon Federation is a not-for-profit organization devoted to advancing in awareness, participation, education, and enjoyment of the skill-based game of backgammon. So before we begin the presentations, I'd like to recognize many of the people who support the mission. I'd like to introduce our staff, the committees, and our board members. Please stand as I call your name, and I ask everyone to hold their applause until all of them have been recognized. First is Dan Minardi, our Chief Operating Officer. So Dan gets special recognition. April Messick, who's not here tonight, she's our Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Education Officer. Cara Schultz helps April with marketing, and I don't think anyone knows this just yet, but Cara is the new chairman of the board of the USBGF. Ed Corey is our membership director. I don't know what we would do without Ed. Ed is like, he dropped in from heaven, and I'm really grateful to have him. Julius High and Tom Jane are our novice education people. Michael Messick is our Chief Technology Officer. Ben Friesen does our bookkeeping. He's our treasurer, and I like to call him our infield utility player. Martin Thurman manages our online Masters Points series. Rich Munitz is director of the online tournament system. Rich has done so much for us in the past couple of years, I just can't tell you. The bracketing and the way tournaments are organized now is so much more on time, and I think it's been a gift to the tournament directors, and Rich is responsible for tournament play today. Thanks very much, Rich. Jason Briggs, who's our fundraising and beneficial giving. Marty Storr is our executive editor of Primetime Backgammon Magazine. Karen Davis is editorial contributor to Backgammon Magazine, Primetime. Chris Hoyer, who is not here and does not play backgammon, is our production editor for Primetime. Bill Lonergan is our local club support. Our Fall Hall of Fame committee is Joe Russell, Patrick Gibson, Neil Kazras, Frank Talbot, Karen Davis, Jake Jacobs, and Kent Goulding. These folks do a lot of work to make sure that we have a good program like this evening. Ed Corey is our membership director. Ratings and statistics is Jeb Horton, Rich Munitz, Neil Kazras, and Joe Russell. Rules and ethics, Frank Talbot, Jeb Horton, Neil Kazras, Rich Munitz. Eligibility, which is a new committee and has been extremely active this past year, Rory Paskar, Ian Terry, Roberto Litzenberger, and Dmitry Abukov. Local Club Initiative, Bill Lundgren. And a new committee called the Calendar Committee, Jonah Seawald, Roberto Litzenberger, and Joel Orso. They've also done a tremendous amount of work and been very active this year, so I really thank them for all their contributions. As you can see, it takes a lot of people to put this together, to make this organization work. It's largely volunteer. Those who do get some kind of a stipend are grossly underpaid. In some cases, I think we're committing grand larceny for how little they get paid. So I really appreciate all the work you folks do and the commitment you have. And it's for the love of the game. That's why they do this. It's for the love of the game. So thanks very much, folks. We just had our board of directors election, and as I said, Kara Schultz is now our chair. I'm president and executive director. Dan Minardi is our chief operating officer. Frank Talbot's our secretary. Jeb Horton is our chief financial officer. Ben Friesen, as I said, is treasurer. April Messick, Antoinette Marie Williams, Rory Paskar, Jason Briggs, Ian Terry, Alex Ashegan, and Rich Munitz joins us back on the board again this year. So thanks very much, folks. This is really a wonderful board. I'm so happy with how the election turned out. It's truly a working board, and I'm really grateful to have their support and their efforts and their time. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge those who have become founding sponsors and mission sponsors. We can't live without you folks. You folks give us the confidence to go ahead and invest in our future, and it's kind of a scary thing to spend other people's money. I'm really cognizant that it's your money, it's membership money that we're spending, and membership can go up and down, other sources can go up and down, but when we get mission sponsor funding, that makes a big difference, and that really helps us to really think about growing our mission and growing backgammon. So thank you very much. The USBGF Online Master Points System recognizes those who accrued the most points in the USBGF Online Tournament Series. I'm going to have Rich Munitz come up and recognize those folks, but I'm also going to have him at the same time recognize our top 10 ABT winners, our top 10 ABT Online winners, our top 10 ABT Intermediate Advanced winners, and I think that might be it, right, Rich?
Sounds like I've got about 100 people to recognize or something there. A lot of top 10s. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming. The USBGF Online Tournament Series is an ongoing set of tournaments that are played continuously throughout the year. Every month, new tournaments start up. And it's a great way to participate and play tournaments and get to play all sorts of players from around the country. This past year in 2023, we are going to recognize the top 10 finishers for the 2023 calendar year. Unfortunately, the names, aside from number 1, could not be put in the program because literally people were earning points up until December 31st, and the program had to go to print. Just anyone who's here whose name I read off, please stand and be recognized. I'm going to read top 10 from bottom to top. Karen Davis, Cara Schultz, John Brown, Linda Clay, John Gamilianson, Ted Chi, Ilya Guzai, Roberto Litzenberger as number 3, Bill Lonergan, number 2, and Mary Morris, who is not here with us, at number 1 for the year. Congratulations to everybody. Good job, well done. In addition to the online tournament series, which is ongoing, the USBGF does host weekend tournaments online for those who want to spend a day playing lots of backgammon. And Ben Friesen is the director of these tournaments. This is called the ABT Online. This program started during the pandemic when there were no live tournaments taking place, and it was sufficiently popular that we chose to keep it going now that we're back to live play. I'm going to read off the names again of the top 10 finishers in the ABT Online for 2023. Charlie Stewart, Ilya Guzai, David Rennie, and again, if you hear your name, please stand up so we can applaud you at the end. Jeff Schwartz, Joel Montgomery, Mario Savan. Number 3, Art Benjamin. Number 2, Roderick Schoenfeld. And number 1 for the year, Blake Sorum. Congratulations to everybody. And now, of course, we are all at an American Backgammon Tour event, and it's time to recognize the top 10 finishers for 2023 on the American Backgammon Tour. So we do have trophies. We recognize both the top 10 finishers on the intermediate, so just amongst points earned at the intermediate level. And that was new, I believe, starting last year. And then the top 10 finishers as well for all divisions. So for the intermediate, top 10 finishers again, stand up if I call your name. Robert Hathaway, Andy Platt, Steve Klesker, Tom McAvoy, Joshua Postuma, PJ McCauley, Laura Granger, number 3, Boris Sharansky, Tiffany Van, and William Reeves. Congratulations. And in that list, of course, are a number of people who have, of course, moved up to the open division. If you're that successful in the intermediate, you probably don't belong there anymore. So congratulations to some new open players. Now for the ABT, I would ask anybody whose name I call, please come up front, because we do have trophies for the top finishers. Number 10, Fernando Bracconi. Number 9, Al Hodis. 8, Greg Lilly. 7, Max Stockschlager. 6, David Wynn. 5, Saba Bendrashvili. 4, Mike Horry. 3, Victor Ashkenazi. Victor is not here. I know he's at the tournament. Number 2, Kit Woolsey. Okay. I was beginning to wonder. And I just want to say, Kit finished the year with 51.7 points. I believe that this is the first time that anybody has ever earned 50 points in a year and not taken first place. That shows you how strong this year's finishes were. Well done, Kit. Victor almost hit 50 as well, just short. So great year. It was a great competition. The point leader was going back and forth all year long as one person cashed, another person cashed, switched hands a number of times. So it was an exciting year on the tour. And of course, number 1, who unfortunately could not be with us this year, is John O'Hagan. And pretending to be John O'Hagan is this guy. I am John O'Hagan.
I didn't bring his award because he said he was
Anyway, Phil almost got away with it, if not for those pesky kids. So yeah, great job to John, who finished the year with 59 points. Cashed in 6 different events throughout the year, won 2 separate ABT tournaments. Really phenomenal. John's first time winning the ABT. So congratulations to everybody on the ABT who placed. And we now start a new year with, again, the largest tournament ever on the ABT. And the New York Metro beat its own record from 2020. So good job, everyone. Thank you.
So before we get on to the Hall of Fame inductees, I also would like to say a few words about how we're trying to grow the game. I'd like to really thank Phil Simborg, since Phil got up and almost took John O'Hagan's award. It reminded me that I should acknowledge him. Phil put me in touch with a guy named Jose Rico at Olone College in Fremont, California. Jose is a math professor and loves backgammon, has 2 or 3 boards of his own. He was bringing him to school and teaching backgammon. Didn't have enough because he was getting so much interest from the students. So Phil put him in touch with me, and I think we shipped him 11 boards last year in efforts to help grow his backgammon program. I just got an email from him a couple days ago saying that he's going to be incorporating backgammon into his mathematics classes. He got a grant from the college for students to get student USBGF memberships. He bought some precision dice, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how his program advances. So thank you very much, Phil, for putting us in touch. Jason Dordell, who's a brand new player for us in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, put me in touch with a teacher at a private high school in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and she's starting a backgammon club. Again, she's been bringing her own boards, has run out of boards for all the students that are interested. So we shipped her 6 boards at the end of the year, and I'll be expecting to get some photographs and stories. But those are the kinds of things that I really can't think of a better way to spend our money on, is to start getting kids involved in backgammon, supporting clubs in schools where there's someone who's willing to see it through year after year. If any of you come across those opportunities, please put me in touch with them or put them in touch with me. I'd love to be able to ship out boards to prospective school clubs. So, on to Hall of Fame. The American Backgammon Hall of Fame recognizes those individuals who have achieved extraordinary playing results and/or have made extraordinary contributions to backgammon in the United States. Candidates are not limited to American citizens, provided they meet eligibility requirements. Candidates for the Hall of Fame are individuals who, 1, have a significant body of work over a very substantial period of time, defined as 20 years or more, as players, directors, authors, publishers, promoters, teachers, and/or innovators. 2, have realized exceptional accomplishments. A, he or she has demonstrated remarkable skill through success over the board for decades, and/or B, gained achievements and recognition in the U.S. backing community over a long career. Nominations are taken from the backgammon community at large. The nominations must include detailed justification for submitting a nomination, including notable awards and accomplishments, and a description of the nominee's significant body of work for backgammon in the United States. The nominations are vetted by the Hall of Fame Committee, and a ballot is created. The Hall of Fame Committee members are Joe Russell, Patrick Gibson, Kent Goulding, Neil Kazaros, Frank Talbot, Jake Jacobs, and Karen Davis. Beginning in 2023, we also established a Legacy Hall of Fame Committee. Those members are the above people that I just mentioned, plus Chris Trencher, Steve Sachs, Kit Woolsey, and Art Benjamin. The reasoning behind forming a Legacy Hall of Fame Committee was the feeling that, well, let me back up. The electors that elect the Hall of Fame inductees are inductees that are already in the Hall of Fame, a grandfathered list of electors, and then the USBGF Board of Directors. And there's a sense that the current Board of Directors are a lot of new people like me, only been around a few years, and don't have the institutional memory, if you will, of those who played in the 60s, 70s, 50s, 80s, you name it. They're just names to me, and sometimes the biographies, though well detailed and written, don't have the same kind of punch, I guess, as if you knew those people or knew that person. So we created this new committee to vet people who aren't active anymore necessarily, or have had a long sabbatical from backgammon, who are deserving of induction but may not be in the forefront of people like me and the Board of Directors to gather enough votes. So the new committee, or the additional committee, is charged with selecting legacy players, and they're not voted on, they're simply selected by the committee. And this year, they selected 2 people who are going to be inducted tonight, and they also selected a person for 2025 and 2026. John Crawford for 2025, and I just went blank. In 2026. So that's an explanation as best as I can give it as to why we have 3 inductees tonight. So tonight we have 1 inductee from the normal induction process and 2 legacy inductees. So I'd also like to read off a list of the previously elected or inducted Hall of Fame members. Knack Ballard, and these are in alphabetical order. Knack Ballard, Art Benjamin, Carol Joy Cole, Barclay Cook, Bill Davis, Karen Davis, Malcolm Davis, Falafel, Ray Fogerland, Patrick Gibson, Kent Goulding, John O'Hagan, Tim Holland, Oswald Jacoby, Neil Kazaros, Danny Kleinman, Mochi, Paul McGrill, Howard Markowitz, Alexis Obunsky, Ed O'Loughlin, Bill Roberti, Jill Russell, Steve Sachs, Mike Sinkowitz, Mike Svobodny, Joe Sylvester, Walter Trice, and Kit Woolsey. Our first award of this evening will be presented by Kent Goulding. Kent?
I had to learn to tie a bow tie. I didn't do a very good job, but here I am. I actually thought, I really shouldn't be here. When I first heard of a Wilcox Snellings, I actually thought it was some kind of sporting term. I thought it was a British cricket accomplishment. You know, it's not like a suicide squeeze or whatever. Did you see Barmy Fungy Phipps from the Drones Club? He stepped onto the pitch and bowled the perfect Wilcox Snellings. I'm still not quite sure what a perfect Wilcox Snellings is, but we're working on one variation this evening. I was not supposed to be speaking tonight because of that. Joe Russell was supposed to be speaking but couldn't make it. And so what I have is I'm going to read Joe Russell's introduction speech with maybe a couple of thoughts of my own mixed in because I go back a long way and knew Wilcox pretty darn well. I am honored, in Joe Russell's voice, think of an older, less handsome person speaking. I am honored to give the induction speech for someone I consider to be one of the finest players in the history of backgammon and a good friend, Wilcox Snellings. Will is known throughout the backgammon community as one of the few elite players who are a notch above the rest. Most know, but not everyone, that in the early 90s, he was considered the best player in the world by his peers. He was voted the top giant of backgammon twice and finished second in the voting once. He achieved this by placing in several prestigious events and by being the most feared money player on the planet. Bot analysis of his recorded matches has confirmed he played at a lower performance rating than anyone at the time. Interrupting Mr. Russell. In 1997, I was playing in a Masters Invitational tournament in Las Vegas. It was a 23-point final match. The Masters Invitational was arguably more prestigious and harder to win than the Open event. I had made my way through Hall of Famer Malcolm Davis, James Colin, and Stuart Hosen, and was awaiting, as my reward in the finals, the winner between Knack Ballard and Wilcox Snellings. Now, I'd played a lot against Knack Ballard over the years, a ton. And Knack Ballard was usually my vote for number one in the voting for top player. So I have a choice between rooting for Knack to win and playing the guy I thought was number one, or rooting for Wilcox to win and playing the guy I had not voted for as number one, okay? Which do you want to be eaten by, the bear or the lion? I knew Knack Ballard. I knew Knack Ballard played better than I did, but I also knew I could beat him. I was really rooting for Knack to win because I was terrified to play Wilcox Snellings. And I wasn't afraid to play anybody, but if there's one match in my entire career where I was actually scared, it was the finals in Las Vegas in 1997 where I played Wilcox Snellings, and he beat me. And it mentions here and there the low PRs. We had a rather gnarly game where both of us made a bunch of blunders, which sent our PRs to the ER. Even with that game full of relative expert blunders, Wilcox performed at a 3.5. I have the match. The match was recorded. I have all the matches I played then. And Wilcox played at a 3.5. Nobody did that, or very, very few. And that was a bad result for Wilcox. Okay, back to Joe. Will was taught the game by his grandfather when he was 16. He became more involved as a freshman at the University of Virginia. He played semi-regularly while working as an option trader for most of the next decade. After that, he played full-time for a few years at the Coterie Club in New York City. The Coterie Clubs were the best of the best, locked horns and steeled their games. Will worked diligently and soon became the most respected money player at the club, one the other players would rather avoid if possible. During this period, he also placed in many prestigious backgammon tournaments and provided outstanding commentary at the Backgammon World Championships, which earned him further respect. I was actually going off script again. I was talking to Mike Senkowitz a little earlier before he got sick and wouldn't come out of his room. I asked him about the coterie in those years because Michael played at the coterie and many would have said he was one of, if not the best players there. Michael said Wilcox really pissed him off because Wilcox was too good, he was diligent, and he'd show up first thing in the morning before anyone's there so he couldn't be locked out of any chouettes. If a chouette was forming, Wilcox had to be in. And Michael actually admitted to me some of the times if Wilcox was already in, Michael would look over the field and go back home again. So it's not hyperbole, some of these things Joe was saying. Will was not only brilliant at the game, but also dedicated and organized in the days before bots. If you did not understand a position, play, or cube action, it did not lend itself to mathematical analysis. The only way to learn was to create a reference position. To do so, one would roll out games hundreds of times. Now, I did this with Bill Roberti for the magazine we wrote in the early 90s. You set up the board, you set up the position, you roll it out. First you roll a 1-1, then you roll a 2-1, you rotate around the opening rolls, you keep tracking a thing of paper, and you're rolling, and you're rolling. And to make sure you're not getting biased dice, you shake them up and you roll them, and you shake them up and you roll them. I mean, it goes on, it takes hours. Will wouldn't stop. And also the best way to learn. Hundreds of rollouts do not seem like much when a bot can roll out 1,000 games in a minute, but when you do it by hand, 100 rollouts might take several hours. Will estimates he spent 5,000 hours or more doing hand rollouts. Will says, when you do a hand rollout, you learn a lot about the game and how to play different positions that you may not learn from a bot. Brighter words were never spoken. My experience hand rolling out games, wasn't that you got the statistical result of this is the right play, it's that you experienced how the sausage was made, and you came away a better backgammon player. Not just knowing the answer, you knew why the answer was the answer. Will's dedication, gained knowledge, natural skill, and mathematical ability took him to the top of the backgammon world. Inserting KG again. There was a side benefit to all his hand rollouts, unexpected fringe benefit, and it became apparent at the 1996 World Cup Championship in Dallas, Texas. Wilcox had made it to, I think, the quarterfinals and was paired against James Colin, who was a very, very strong, everybody in the tournament was strong. James Colin was on who could win this thing. It's best 3 out of 5 11-point matches. So at a minimum, you're going to win 33 points to win your match, 3 out of 5. There's a lot of backgammon being played. And in order to make it work, the geniuses running this tournament, me and Roberti, insisted on using chess clocks. And in those days, and not everybody liked that idea, but it had to be done to make the tournament run. In those days, there were no digital clocks. There was no delay. We'd set the clock for a certain amount of time, for both sides. And then as soon as your opponent hits his clock, your clock is running. There is no delay. So however many hours you start with, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down, it's never stopping. So if you run out of time, there was, I think, a 2-point penalty. But in the match between Wilcox and James, it was double match. We love that phrase. 2 matches to 2 matches. Now they're playing double match, the 5th of the best 3 out of 5. And it got down to double match point, or the equivalent of double match point. If either one of them ran out of time, they lose, okay? And they're playing. They get down to the final game, and before it starts, we look at their clocks, and there's a little mechanical plastic thing where the minute hand goes up and pushes it. When it goes past noon, boom, the flag drops. That means you're out of time. We looked at the clocks and estimated less than 3 minutes on each clock, which is not enough time when you're shaking the dice and rolling them and picking them up and making your play, because it's always ticking. Unless it's a very short game, and it's double match points, so you can't end it with a cube. You got to play it to the end. Unless it's a very short game, you're not going to get it done with in 2.5 minutes. I tried to be fair. I said, look, guys, this is the World Cup. This is a big, big deal. I was the tournament director. I'm willing to give you all a couple extra minutes so we can see this thing to its rightful conclusion. But you have to agree because the rules are about the clock, and both players know the clock. They can marshal their own time. And Wilcox looked at the clock, and James looked at the clock, and they squinted, and James said, I think I've got 15 extra seconds. I'm not doing it. Okay? So they got to play. Now, to make sure nothing funny happens, I appoint a referee to monitor the clock, like a linesman on the net at tennis. And of course, I appoint myself. And I'm going to, if either flag falls, there's one for each side. If either flag falls, I will yell time, and that will be the end. Okay? They're chugging along, they're chugging along, they're chugging along. Wilcox has the game won, or essentially won, but a shot gets hit, and it keeps recirculating and recirculating, and the clock keeps, roll faster, roll faster, roll faster. Clock keeps ticking, but before he can finish the game, time! Colin is carried away on the shoulders of all the admirers as the winner. Wilcox takes a deep breath, stands up out of his chair, picks up his dice cup, cocks it back, all that rolling, built some muscle, cocks it back, with a hearty cry of fudge, lets that thing rip as hard as he can. I don't know where the cup went, but I can tell you he bowled a perfect Wilcox Snellings. Then, at the peak of his dominance, he retired. He quit. He walked away. The best player in the world gave up the game for about 20 years. A business opportunity came along that provided financial security for him and his family, and family came first. Will worked as hard or harder at his profession as he had worked at backgammon, often putting in 70-hour weeks. He used his diligence, intelligence, organizational skills to become one of the best in the world in his profession. But when his son became interested in backgammon, Will found his love for the game rekindled and started playing again. Pretty soon, he was testing his mettle online and found that while he was still among the better players in the world, he was not in the top handful like he had been before he quit. But remember, diligent and organized, it was 2015 when Wilcox began using a tool new to him, XG, the bot, and he quickly found his level improving. He had always been eclectic in his play, not a style player with a preordained way he was going to go about it, which made it easier for him to learn from XG analysis. Within months, he was challenging the top players to online matches and outplaying most of them while holding his own against the best. He was back, but not quite back to the very top, but that would change. In 2019, he decided he was ready to play in the Backgammon World Championships again. He had seen his online match play performance rating drop to 2.8. That's ridiculous, placing him among the best in the world. He traveled to Monaco and played splendidly, making the final 8 and playing with the lowest performance rating of anyone who played more than a few matches. Since then, he has played 2 more times and has averaged a 2.9 PR over the 3 trips, which I, by the way, would consider a perfect Wilcox Snellings. The culmination of his success came in 2022, when he made the finals of the undefeated bracket, and at one point, he became 99% to advance to the finals of the World Championship. He played a stellar 2.3 PR in that stressful match against eventual world champion Sander Liloff. In 2022, Will placed first in the Backgammon Super Genius Quiz, a contest created to be a book by James Vogel, which featured 100 questions, 12 contestants, and $5,000 in prize money. He topped the very elite of backgammon in the quiz. Wilcox was back, and he was all the way back. He is now considered among the very best match players in the world, and that, again, is not hyperbole. First of all, Joe Russell wouldn't speak in hyperbole, and neither would I. He is that good. Not many people can reach the zenith of their chosen field, take 20 years off, and return to do it again. Wilcox did it. Kent Goulding refers to him as Rip Van Snellings. I like that. Thank you, Joe. Like nothing has changed, he just went to sleep for 20 years and came back the backgammon beast he was before. Will deserves this honor for his great exhibition of skill over 2 different careers, but he is also one of the game's great ambassadors. He is friendly and approachable. He participates daily in backgammon commentary online and has been doing so for many years. In fact, that's where I started seeing Will's name again. It's online, just chipping in on his opinion on various positions. Always right, helping learn how a master thinks, and he is one of the very best commentators. His commentary at the 3 World Championships he has attended in the last 4 years has been superb, and he is one of the most favored by the listening audience, including me. He has also volunteered to do commentary on several USBGF ABT finals. To top it off, he sets a fine example as a great family man. I can think of no one more deserving of the Backgammon Hall of Fame than Wilcox Snellings. Welcome, Will. One last thing. One last little thing before Will takes over. I have a small personal gift for Will. Over the years since we stopped running the World Cup, I've been slowly selling off all of our equipment, allowing me to afford to buy this tuxedo. And, getting down near the bottom of the storage shed and matching up, do I have enough checkers? Do I have enough cups? Do I have enough dice? This, that, and the other thing. I'm getting near the bottom. I discovered I've got enough of everything, but there was one problem. I ended up with something unmatched, which I'm now giving to Wilcox in case he ever finds the other one.
Thank you. Where is Ken? He's disappeared. Raise your hand. There you are. Okay. I was supposed to say, oh, you're supposed to still be here. Say, wow, Kent. Thank you for the introduction and your great style, as always. Ken and I go back to my college days when I had backgammon aspirations, but wasn't exactly grounded. We matched up in the finals of the Las Vegas Masters event in 1997 that Kent just referred to. That's the last event I played in the US until now in New York, which is pretty hard to believe. I tried to play in Michigan. Carol remembers I tried to play in 2019, and I just suddenly came down sick. I was in my hotel room almost the entire time, unfortunately. Thank you as well to the United States Backgammon Federation, the Hall of Fame Committee, my great friend Joe Russell, who unfortunately couldn't be here, and who persistently nominated me. I'm grateful for his determination to help me out there. And of course, those who voted for me. As many of you know, I've embraced my backgammon journey in 2 distinct chapters. To be meaningfully part of this community and backgammon's 5,000-year history is really special. I'm thrilled to receive this honor in New York City. I was born in Louisiana and have a large family there in Monroe. But it was in Manhattan where I spent most of my early years, came to evolve my backgammon at the Coterie Club in some of my middle years, and where my mom and stepdad still live. Backgammon is a remarkable game, and the backgammon community is teeming with very smart people from all walks of life, and now from nearly everywhere in the world. Most of us in this room just happen to have been captivated by this diabolically beautiful game and made of it a hobby or a profession. Backgammon isn't just another game. It stands as a giant as it rewards mastering key probabilities
navigating shifting strategies, and managing one's psychology. The board aesthetic alone was one of the first aspects which seduced me at age 16. After that, I took on the challenge to master particular math skills, to grow what's called board vision, and to make good decisions quickly. The next big step was learning to keep some emotional balance through the frequent, outrageous swings of luck, for and against. It's quite the package. I do want to say in the middle that last year was a painful one for me and my wife, her family, as well as my family here and in Louisiana. My wife lost her mom, Miriam. I lost my brother, Terrence, my brother, George, and my stepmom, Diane. In this moment of personal honors, I remain mindful of what's really important. I'm grateful to have family with me tonight. At that table are my wife, Viria, our daughter, Maria, my stepdad, Pete, my uncle, Frank, and Aunt Mary, and my wife's niece, Alexandra, and her husband, Michael. My mom and Pete witnessed both my extended struggles with gambling, as well as my eventually successful path in backgammon and beyond. It's Pete's birthday today, so that's happy birthday, Pete. In a friendly gloat, Pete still reminds me of his undefeated status against me in backgammon. A resounding 1-0. He might play me again one day, but I don't think so. My Uncle Frank has been one of my most consistent supporters throughout my life. Viria and I met in Costa Rica nearly 30 years ago at a backgammon tournament. As luck would have it, it was Lee Genud, also being inducted this evening, who played Cupid for us those many moons ago. Lee has been our friend ever since. Intentions, care, and effort are important in everything we value. All the same, luck ebbs and flows nearly as much in life as it does in backgammon. My great fortune is our life together as a family, a fortune beyond measure. I'm so happy our daughter Maria was able to be here. She and her husband Kurt are doing well in Las Vegas, where we began our life story long ago. They just bought a beautiful home in our original neighborhood. Our son John is here in spirit while taking care of his wife Kayla and one-year-old Cooper Snellings. Cooper is such an incredible blessing in our family. As many of you know, and Kent referred to, it was John's suddenly strong interest in backgammon which lured me back to the game in 2015. Little did I know how things would develop for both of us. John's become a terrific player. We've backgammon bonded, challenged each other, and of course, have something fun we can always return to. It's wonderful, not just here, but in the game room as well. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces spanning the decades. Antoinette is here. Wake up! The two of us go back to some of my early backgammon years, frequenting the game room on the west side. Antoinette has been there for my many backgammon incarnations, and she always kept me from taking myself too seriously. Many of my real friends I've made through backgammon. I can think of some in 12 states and several countries. That's really something. A couple of these friends were instrumental in creating my remarkable career opportunity, which began in 2006. Stan Thompson, legendary backgammon player from the golden era of the 70s and 80s, and also featured as chapter 1 of the book Gambling Wizards, was one of those friends. Stan was a key mentor of mine from my mid-30s on. Sadly, Stan passed a couple of years ago. Joe Russell is the other. Joe is a Hall of Famer, winner of the Monte Carlo World Championships, and scores of other events. He's a wonderful and constant contributor to the backgammon community. Joe and I have known each other for 43 years. There was a mutual respect from early on. Our friendship has grown strong over the years, and I'm so glad for that. Backgammon for me has been both a pleasure and obsession. It's featured a quest for excellence. As I've shared, it's also been a vehicle leading me to great friendships, business partners, and most importantly, to my wife. Which brings me to my answer for a question I've been understandably asked a lot. I don't regret my long absence from the game. It was during those years as an adult when I did some real growing up, came to have a family, a life I treasure. I'm also glad to be back and to have the chance to test myself against today's elite players. Next summer's UBC event in Spain fits my schedule, and that's a strong challenge I'm looking forward to. I'll be retiring from my career a couple of years from now, and thankfully, I'll finally have my schedule free to attend several US tournaments, such as the great ones in San Antonio and Los Angeles. Lastly, it's exciting that Genud and Lewis DeYoung are also being honored tonight, and I congratulate you both. Thank you very much. Thanks again, John. Congratulations. Thank you.
The Hall of Fame Award dinner really is my favorite backgammon event of the year. Just for recognizing how strong this community is. Some of you folks have been playing with each other, against each other for 35, 40, 45 years. Your friendship 50 years, sorry. It's just remarkable to me how you folks have maintained this serendipity together, and that's a beautiful story that Will just told. I know we're going to hear more from Lee. In Michigan, last summer we inducted Mochi and Falafel. Mochi got up and told some marvelous stories about Falafel. I had no idea that Falafel was Mochi's mentor. He told some nice stories. Another piece of serendipity from last summer was Michigan was Mochi's first ABT tournament. So it's just amazing what comes out in these kinds of things that Lee would be Cupid for Will and his future wife. So next is Karen Davis. Please come up.
Thank you, John. Lee Genud has been a courageous pathbreaker all her life, and in doing so, she's been an inspiration, particularly, I think, to women players, not only for the quality of her play, but her fearlessness and willingness to take chances and her competitive spirit. All the time doing that, charming everyone with her warm smile and gregarious personality. It's an honor to call her a friend. She arrived on the world stage when she won the Backgammon World Championship in 1981. Her final match with the legendary Joe DeYoung was immortalized in a book by Bill Roberti called, not surprisingly, Lee Genud versus Joe DeYoung, the 1981 World Championship of Backgammon. She was underestimated by many, including, some say, Joe DeYoung, which may have contributed to her stunning victory. But it shouldn't have been a surprise. She was an established author. I saw a copy I think Michael Rosen had that he had gotten Lee to sign this evening. It was Lee Genud's Backgammon book, published in 1974, a bestseller. She had also won the Women's World Championship twice in 1978 and 79. And she won or came in second in 37 major world tournaments from 1979 through 1985, including the Remy Martin doubles in 79, the Remy Martin Open in 79, semifinalists in the Backgammon World Championship Consolation in 79, semifinalists in the Turnberry Isle Consolation in 79 and 80, and semifinalist in the Boston Consolation in 1980. During the backgammon heyday in the 1970s, she toured the U.S., promoting backgammon and major sponsors, including television appearances in 7 cities. She directed backgammon clubs in California and New York, taught thousands of students to play the game. Among her accomplishments, she was the director of the Cavendish West. She was the resident pro of Pips in Beverly Hills. She was the resident pro of the Playboy Mansion West. And she taught over 2,000 people to play backgammon while in Los Angeles. She was the founder, co-owner, tournament director, and teaching professional at the Card and Cube in Long Island, New York, from 1977 to 1980. Most recently, she's been presenting seminars at backgammon clubs and giving backgammon lessons in Palm Beach, Florida. She won the 2023 Palm Beach Women's Classic this year and finished second to backgammon world champion Katie Scalamandra in the inaugural Palm Beach Women's Classic tournament last year, where she was honored at a brunch at a Palm Beach private club by Jason Briggs. She won the Sunday Florida Women's Cup in 2023. She finished second in the Los Angeles Wonder Woman jackpot in 22 and first in one of 3 doubles events in Los Angeles in 2022 with her doubles partner, Kit Woolsey, as well as third, fourth in the Sunday Florida doubles event in 22 with Kit. The Genud Cup, which is an event between the U.S. women's backgammon team and the U.K. women's backgammon team, was named in her honor, and she was interviewed following the conclusion of the inaugural 2020 match, which was won narrowly by the U.S. team. Lee, you have paved the way, and women players all over the world are grateful for what you have demonstrated and accomplished. Welcome to the American Backgammon Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's all like a miracle. They used to say I was a dinosaur. I am, and I'm still here. I bet you didn't know I'm a Jersey girl. So if anybody else came from the state, it's a little cold for me. But I was born here and I went to West Orange High. For those that are from the area, I just played a lovely lady today named Carol. We were born in the same hospital. So life is short. For me, no one ever heard of a woman playing games, hardly. I had been a pro in bridge and loved the game and would have sworn I would never miss a sectional, regional, national, because I love bridge. But then I met a man across the room that I think I loved more instinctively. His name, you heard it from Wilcox, was Stanley Thompson. And Stanley, although unknown to most everybody here, was just as good as anybody we've ever had. And he was assisting with Paul McGrail in writing the book, and I fell in love. And I lived in LA at that time, and I sat there watching and watching and watching this new thing, and I realized that this game was born for me, because I really get spatialness and stuff. Numbers, not so much. So I started to do that. And when I got, I was first, I don't believe in luck to start with, but the truth is I've been the luckiest person. First by that occurrence, then I went to LA and Hugh Hefner says, here's your job, come every day to the Playboy Mansion and teach movie stars. Well, I can do that. And next thing I know, I'm in Lucille Ball's home every week and played every movie star you know. I taught them. At night, I got to play with them in a chouette, the ones that could play, and that started paying for the rent. I had a great time. And all I did was teach about 2,000 people and beat movie stars. I thought it was a great job. So from 25 an hour, I had a life. I'm a mother of 2 children, and I needed the life. Then I won the Monte Carlo, which is another miracle in life. But not to say I didn't belong there, but some guy, you know what a Calcutta auction is? They bet on people 30 to 1, 35 to 1, or something like that. Well, they had a sign up 100 to 1 against any woman. So a very wealthy man who was dating somebody else, another woman, backgammon friend of mine, and so he spent $100 at 100 to 1. Why not? And to protest what had happened. And when I came down to collecting, and I bet on myself, someone who's one of our old backgammon players came to me, dragged me from a casino with a glass of wine, and said, I am going to help you tonight. And I knew it wasn't something I should worry. Went to his room, and he sat down with 6 matches that he had recorded by Joe Dweck. And he would pretend to be Joe Dweck, and I was just me. And I said, he did that, not to discredit Joe Dweck, but by morning I thought I could win. I didn't go to bed thinking that before the help of David Leibowitz. So I go to play to being underrated again. You know, I'm just a girl, and got very fortunate and lucky to have won the world championship. So there was this guy, remember that, this guy that, you know, said, oh, what, a New York, Paul Harvey. For those of you that even know these names, you used to turn on the radio before I was even born. It's like another century. Paul Harvey was his name, just like a Walter Winchell. He was on the radio every day. He says, do you believe it? A New York housewife has won the world championship of backgammon. Well, all of my husbands protested that. So I got lucky, I won the world championship, and that was a great moment in my life. And then I got to be with Hefner, and someone paid me to write a book, and then I was getting famous, and my kids were getting richer, and things were so terrific. And I've had the experience of traveling 22 weeks a year from Long Island to Europe, and played every tournament in Central Europe, and had phenomenal results because I couldn't believe a girl could do something. So I had a wonderful time, and the friends. I mean, I will never not be grateful for Karen Davis, for Wilcox, and of course for Wilcox Snellings, who has always been my friend, both having been taught through Stan Thompson. I was very lucky to have associated. I have my dear friend over there to play doubles with, and he's been my dear friend in other respects. Many people have saved me through some tough times. So I'm grateful, and I can tell you just anecdotally, I haven't been traveling, I can't afford to, and I have not felt this amount of love and the remembrance of how many people in this room that I love and have shown that to me. And it's more than trivial to me. I came back this week after I don't play much. I came back, and just to feel that again, I am enriched and glory, and I am so lucky. I have a family. My favorite niece has shown up with 3 children that I've never seen before, and her husband. And I'm grateful that they came all the way up here from Washington in the snow or whatever to enjoy me tonight. So I'm full of joy. And I can only say that without Karen, I don't know where I'd be. And this woman has not only saved backgammon, she has saved me. And last of all, I have to give a little shtick for those of you. The moment I was announced having won Monte Carlo, I was brought into a room and given a mic right away. Say a few words. And I thanked all, because I knew Gloria Steinem. And I said, I thank all those men that taught me to play in Gloria Steinem. Thank you.
Congratulations, Lee. And that reminds me, a picture, will Lee, Wilcox, and your families and presenters all stay after so we can get some more photos? Okay. Okay, our last award of the evening, Kent, would you please come forward and do the presentation?
I'm KG. Lewis DeYoung, arguably the biggest influence, whether he realized it or not, in my backgammon career. Not just as a player, because others influenced my play, but the way he conducted backgammon tournaments, the way he talked about backgammon tournaments, the way he promoted backgammon tournaments, the way he made backgammon special, the way he helped make backgammon and keep backgammon glamorous. Lewis DeYoung is still living backgammon history. He didn't just witness the Big Bang explosion, which started when modern backgammon tournaments, he participated. And he didn't just participated, he won many of them. And now I'm talking about tournaments starting in 1964. Then, as things were really heating up, he added fuel to the fire and helped create and build on modern backgammon in a wide variety of ways. Because this is a U.S. Backgammon Hall of Fame, as a player, there's some question, well, is Lewis U.S., is he American? And in fact, even though he spent the last 45 years living in London, by birthright, Lewis DeYoung is American. He calls himself half American due to his American mother. His early childhood was spent in England, but as he was reaching primary school age, he moved to New York City to live with his mother's family. His father stayed in England, where he was a squadron leader in the RAF for 5 years. Lewis lived in New York from 1940, right here, to 1946, where he attended the storied Dalton School. That should make him American. Then it was back to London and more top-notch education at St. Paul's, founded 1509, and his formal education continued at Oriel College, Oxford, for 2 years before he emigrated back to the U.S. and New York City, and finished his degree at Columbia, very American. Lewis has lived and or worked for 30-plus years in the U.S., much of that time during his early backgammon life. He and his wife, Janie, are still snowbirding 2 months a year and living in South Florida at that time. Lewis learned to play in the late 1950s, even before Lee. He was in a regular draw poker game with some international characters in New York City. One of them, a Brit named Donald Marr, kept pestering Lewis to learn backgammon. Eventually, Lewis acceded and found the game came naturally to him. It all felt easy and obvious. Donald also inveigled Philip Martin and Joe Dweck into the game. They'd while away the afternoon chouetting and learning on the fly. Genud Scalamandre, who became a good friend, had a bit of prior experience and helped out, often just kibitzing the chouettes. The group all wanted to play at Lewis's apartment on Sutton Place, nice address, which he'd inherited from his mama. It wasn't Lewis or his apartment which attracted the crew, but rather the hope of seeing some of the other residents. Lewis came in one day and said, "Did you see that? Did you see who we just passed in the lobby?" And Joe or Philip said, "I don't know, who was it?" Lewis, "It was Arthur Miller." And they go, "Who? Well, what's Arthur Miller?" Well, it wasn't Arthur Miller they actually wanted to see. They came to the apartment to play and hang around the lobby to see Arthur Miller's wife, who in 1958 and 1959 was Marilyn Monroe. There's an introduction to backgammon. Within a year, oh, by the way, for those who don't know, Philip Martin was considered the best backgammon, British, considered the best backgammon player in Europe during those early years on into the 70s. And Joe Dweck was considered the other best backgammon player in Europe for all those years, on way beyond the 70s. It was arguably the strongest chouette that ever existed, starting from scratch. Within a year, Lewis was playing in a chouette with Gino Scalamandre, Tim Holland, and Oswald Jacoby, among others. The chouette was trial by fire, but also full consultation. Honest opinions were openly shared to the benefit of all. Next chapter. Okay, I view modern backgammon tournament history as consisting of three distinct eras. The early modern era, which ran from 1964 through the mid-70s. The mid-modern era, which so many of us participated in from roughly 1976 to about Y2K, followed by the modern era. Lewis was already a top echelon backgammon player in 1964 before Obi ran his first tournament, when he played in Obi's first tournament in Freeport, Bahamas. By the way, again, for US backgammon purposes, the Bahamas basically is the US. The Bahamas is basically a suburb of Florida's Gold Coast with even better beaches and resorts, but with a complete lack of FBI, IRS, or any other government agencies. The better people could play backgammon without being disturbed. Backgammon was an acceptable gentleman's gambling game, so the circuit naturally catered to the leisure classes with tournaments held in exotic locales. Backgammon was glamorous and exciting. Anyone could learn to play and then compete with the best players. Tournaments were as much social events as big parties, with backgammon thrown in to spice things up. I bought my first tuxedo in 1975 to wear at the European Backgammon Championship held in Monte Carlo. The invitation to the tournament was more like a fancy wedding invitation, and it included the wording black tie when referring to the gala auction dinner. What did we do with gala? 1 week before Monte Carlo, there was another tournament, this one in Cannes, of French Riviera Film Festival fame. All the better people will be there. The invitation did not include the words black tie. I wore a business suit, as did the men in the family I was traveling with. We're the only ones not in dinner jackets. The only ones. I'm not making that mistake again. On that, I remember the first few times I was in Monte Carlo when it was by then the World Championship, and the awards ceremony would come, the awards cocktail party and ceremony would come around, and the first award they gave out, and I've got my fingers crossed, we'll see tomorrow. The first award they gave out, which I at first thought was sort of silly, but in future years I kept paying attention to see if I could spot potential winners. I mean, this evening I'm wearing a Brooks Brothers suit instead of my Bill Blass, which is collecting moss in my closet. I've got the geezerly Mephisto shoes instead of my Bally's patent leather ones, so maybe my chances are low. But the first award they gave away at the dinner in Monte Carlo was Best Dressed Award. Maybe I'll win it one day soon. I'll leave out that story more later if anybody wants to hear it. Backgammon then was not yet overrun with chess bums and math nerds seeking to make a buck or two. No offense, everybody here tonight. While most of the tournaments in that era were held offshore in exotic and luxurious locales. They were essentially U.S. tournaments, attended predominantly by American players, with the best players all American, and with the odd Brit sneaking in here or there. Over the next decade, starting in 1964, Lewis won at least 10 tournaments outright, including at such venues as Abidjan and the Ivory Coast, I think that's in Africa, Baden-Baden, Biarritz, Berkeley Square, London, Lake Como, Claremont Club, London, Evian, Milan, Munich, Paris, and Saint-Tropez. Outright winner. He played for the British team versus Lebanon, okay, a little British slipped in there, Beirut in 1974, and even attended an invitational tournament in Ramsar, Iran in 1977. The most notable big events in the U.S. at that time were the World Championships in Las Vegas. In 1973, Lewis finished second at the World Championships to Carol Crawford. Had the USBGF Hall of Fame been formed at the end of the early modern era, Lewis DeYoung would have been a slam dunk inductee as one of the very best American players of that time. Things started to change in the mid-1970s. Lewis is instrumental. In 1973, as resident expert of the Ladbrokes Round British Amateur Tournament, no entry fee, he introduced the first ever closed-circuit TV broadcast of the finals. These guys wanted backgammon to be a spectator sport, appreciated. They wanted to be, James Bond. They wanted to be watched and oohed and awed, and the way to do that was to make it glamorous enough to get it on TV. Well, they were having trouble succeeding, but Lewis took a step by closed circuit broadcasting the finals of the tournament. There had been over 3,000 total participants across England, with the final held at the London Hilton Hotel. U.S. tennis superstar Jimmy Connors, a true backgammon aficionado, was staying there during Wimbledon, which he won, and helped Lewis with the commentary. Closed-circuit TV finals became a big deal. I mean, it all seems so easy now with the streaming and the technology. It wasn't. The technology was expensive, big, heavy, but it made it possible for larger crowds to not only watch expert play, but to get play-by-play commentary as well. Lewis arranged the first closed-circuit TV use in the U.S. at Obie's 1974 World Championship in Vegas, won by Claude Beer. Lewis teamed up with Oswald Jacoby to do the commentary. Lewis built on that concept by bringing closed-circuit TV to the Monte Carlo World Championships, as well as to the black and white Scotch circuit, which he put together in the U.S. For many years, the viewing rooms for the finals in Monte Carlo was packed and had the feel of a giant Super Bowl party. It was an expert's rite of passage to test their mettle playing under the lights. If you hadn't been subjected to that pressure, you were hardly considered an expert. Further, commentary by the likes of Paul McGrill would either expose your weaknesses to the world or highlight your brilliancies. I personally will never forget winning the Washington, D.C. black and white Scotch event. It was my first experience playing on closed-circuit TV. During the mid-modern era, Lewis's biggest contributions to backgammon, not only in the U.S. but around the world, came from his career as a promoter, organizer, director, and auctioneer. He worked with and/or brought in major corporate sponsorship, starting with Philip Morris and Merit Cigarettes. He was the sole organizer and director in Monte Carlo, 1976, before it was the World Championship. It was a big success. In 1977, Philip Morris brought him in as official backgammon consultant, and he took over running their events. His first North American tournament was the World Championships in Nassau in 1977. With over 400 entrants, it was the largest North American tournament ever held up until that time. He did 3 major events in Nassau, including the 1978 World Championships won by Paul McGrill. All of those tournaments were U.S. backgammon. Nearly 100% U.S. participants, and all won by U.S. players. And that's counting Baron Vernon Ball as American, no matter what he may want to tell you. The World Championship was moved to Monte Carlo in 1979 and boasted the largest field ever with 705 entrants. Lewis also set a record as auctioneer when he raised $256,000 in the Calcutta auction. Adjusted for inflation, that record auction would total almost exactly $1 million today. Imagine that, $1 million in the auction. Good luck. The black tie auction dinners were held in the Salle des Étoiles in Monte Carlo. They were more than worth the trip. Given the choice of not playing in the tournament or missing those dinners, I dumped the tournament in a heartbeat. The food, the glamour, the venue on a promontory reaching into the Mediterranean with retractable walls and roof, the best talent in the world's stage show were matched or surpassed by Lewis's extraordinary auctioneering skills. Lewis roasted the players and bidders alike with his acerbic wit and droll humor. Sitting in the audience, I was torn between laughing and crying, but either way, I was entranced. Check out the video documentary, 1985 Backgammon World Championship, easily found on YouTube. Everyone should do that. You'll get a good taste. It goes on for about an hour. You'll get a good taste of what that tournament was like and what backgammon was like. Not only that, but you'll see there was still heavily U.S. tournament. The official bookmaker is interviewed briefly. That was me. Bill Roberti is featured prominently, as are Paul McGrill and Mike Svobodny. You even get to see Svobodny getting up in the morning wearing just his BVDs and almost think he looks glamorous. There are snippets of the auction dinner, including Lewis DeYoung auctioning Lee Genud and only saying nice things about her, more or less apologizing for the many times he'd picked on her in the past. Yes, it is Monte Carlo, but is still essentially U.S. backgammon. It is conducted in English, the auction is in U.S. dollars, and most of the betting is in US dollars. At the 1979 World Championship, Lewis conjured up, his words, Gammanoid, the first AI-powered robot. After contacting the program's designer, Hans Berliner, at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. I played on the chess team with Hans Berliner in 1970 and 71, and nearly a decade later, Art Benjamin did math studies at Carnegie Mellon. Lewis brought in a robotics firm from Chicago. This is all a publicity stunt for backgammon. Lewis brought in a robotics firm from Chicago to provide the actual robot. A $5,000 purse was put up for the man versus machine challenge, pitting new world champion Luigi Villa, who may have been the first non-American world champion there ever was, pitting world champion Luigi Villa against the Gammanoid. The robot won 7-1. Philip Morris Corporation confirmed over 1,000 stories with pictures worldwide and TV clips. This provided huge publicity for backgammon. At the 1978 Bahamas tournament, Lewis convened what may have been the first ever rules conference. And you don't want to know what backgammon rules or running backgammon tournaments was like in those days. There basically weren't any rules. It was more like a over-the-top battle royal. Lewis helped put together the first rules conference, which formulated and codified the merit rules used for many years and provided the basis for many rules still in use today, including much of Lewis's original wording. Lewis appeared on a 15-minute backgammon segments of 50 minutes, doing the Calcutta auction at the 1978 World Championships. Playboy magazine's Hugh Hefner was a big backgammon fan. He wrote the foreword to Lewis's 1978 Playboy's Book of Backgammon. That book and the linking of the Playboy brand to backgammon added fuel to the growing backgammon fire and craze. From 1979 to 1982, Lewis organized the first sponsored BG tour by Black and White Scots Whisky in the U.S. with major events in Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. I won, and Turnberry Isle, Florida. An avid and accomplished sports handicapper, Lewis included an official sanctioned fixed odds book, which provided betting odds for every player at the Monte Carlo World Championships. I was delighted to be invited to run that concession for several years in the mid-1980s. I was aided by an all-future Hall of Fame team, myself and Knack Ballard up front, and calculating odds with input from Lewis, Bill Roberti assisting Joanne Goulding with the computer programming and operations, and Mike Senkowitz providing ballast so that our platform and odds boards didn't blow away. We had to post a minimum of $100,000 in cash or traveler's checks with the SBM in Monte Carlo to guarantee we could cover all the bets. Texas businessman Jim Scott would only bet if A, he got at least 100-to-1 odds, and B, he could bet in multiples of $1,000. We'd let him take his first bet at 120-to-1 odds, and he'd bet $1,000. We'd make him make his second bet at 100-to-1 odds, and he'd bet $1,000, putting our exposure to a neat, clean $220,000. And this is old money, worth a lot more today. I've never before and never since sweated so profusely. It was a sign of prestige to be listed at the shortest pre-opening round odds. Who won the tournament, who went for the highest price in the auction, and who was listed at the shortest odds were the most common questions at the end of the week. I guess I talked about the documentary, watched the documentary. For the remainder of the 1980s, Lewis continued to organize events around the world with product sponsors Courvoisier, Benson & Hedges, Pan American, and Buchanan's Whiskey, among others. Venues included Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Caracas, Las Vegas Desert Inn, I won the $1,000 handicap jackpot, Las Vegas, Rio, Athens, Munich, Madrid, The Hague, Abajan, Isle of Man, Biarritz, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and a QE2 World Cruise. Starting in 1989 at the exclusive Ocean Club on Paradise Island, Bahamas, Lewis ran the $10,000 entry fee Pro-Am backgammon tournament, ably assisted by my ex, Joanne Goulding. Part of Lewis's motivation here was to meld the old and the new, keep the glamour, keep the big bucks, but give the wise guys among us a chance to compete. So there was strictly AMs and pros playing together. They were absolutely spectacular tournaments. The very first one was the most spectacular because I won it. These were among the most enjoyable, challenging, and prestigious contests ever held. They continued at the Ocean Club for 7 years. A number of scenes in the James Bond movie Casino Royale were later filmed at the Ocean Club in our backgammon rooms. They didn't even ask for our permission. The Pro-Am decamped to Turnberry Isle, Miami for a couple of years, and from there it moved to the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas before Lewis finally retired. The pro side of winning teams included many Hall of Famers, myself, Malcolm Davis, Paul McGreal twice, and Bill Roberti, narrowly edging Wilcox Snellings in 1993. Billy Horan won 1 year. After Lewis retired, the tournament kept going, and Knack Ballard managed to win it 3 times. Lewis was an avid tennis player and strong amateur, particularly adept at doubles. In 1971, partnering Tony Roche, he won the Palm Bay Club Miami Pro-Am. While there were no prize money for amateurs, he did manage to pick up $25,000 in the Calcutta auction, a staggering sum at the time. Many top pros competing, including Arthur Ashe, Ken Rosewald, and Rod Laver. In 1979 and again in 1980, he was the finalist in the British over 45 Seniors Championship. Lewis managed to include tennis side events at as many of the events as possible, including Monte Carlo and the Pro-Ams at the Ocean Club. Playing backgammon outdoors and courtside when weather permitted allowed us to watch such BG greats as Lewis, Gino Scalamandri, Mike Corbett, Mike Svabadi, and Jason Lester show their athletic prowess. 1 year, the team of Mike Senkowitz and Michael Madoff defeated Drew Giovannis and Wilcox Snellings in the finals. In 1992, after participating in several Pro-Ams at the Ocean Club, Jim Scott got together with Lewis and put together a real Texas-size Pro-Am. Jim Scott had some issues with playing at the World Cup with chess clocks. He wasn't sure the entry fee in the Bahamas was high enough, so he did it right in Texas. With Lewis's help, the tournament was held at Jim's ranch or county. The entry fee was an intimidating $25,000 for the main event. I played with Bill Bartholomew and was squashed in the opening round. Mike Senkowitz, playing with Stuart Duncan, won not only the doubles but the singles event as well. There's a whole bunch of great stories involving that tournament, some of which I told a little bit of in the lecture this morning. I'll save the others if people want to ask me about them later. In conclusion, I'd like to use a metaphor from antiquity, once recorded by Sir Isaac Newton in Latin. Lewis's education certainly included Latin, and given his age, may well have been the only language used in those days. Hopefully not messing things too up, esse quasi nanos gigantium humoris incidentes. We all know the Latin nano, meaning something very small, like a nanosecond or nanoparticle. In this context, it refers to people of small stature, such as Snow White and the 7 Nanos. When I read the short description of the original class of inductees in the Hall of Fame, I was at first flattered and honored to see these words written about me, and an innovative force in the game, esteemed as a backgammon player, publisher, director, organizer, witty auctioneer, and raconteur extraordinaire. But as I read them, I thought they might be attached to the wrong photo. Finishing the metaphor translation and speaking partly for a number of other Hall of Fame nanos, but mainly humbly and respectfully for myself, in backgammon, to reach the heights I have reached, to have seen as far as I have seen, it is as though I were a nano standing on the shoulders of Lewis DeYoung, gigantum. Thank you. We do get a taste of Lewis. First of all, he has a collection of historic backgammon prints going back forever, which he's collected over his life. He's wondering what to do with them, but they may conceivably end up with the U.S. Backgammon Federation. Here's a brief glimpse.
50 prints. We have here a collection of about 45 or 50 prints, 16th century, 17th century, 18th century. And I thought you might be interested just to see them, give you an idea of how much influence backgammon had in my life to have gone to. My wife especially was helpful in assembling this collection, and I'm rather proud of it. I think it's the only one of its kind as far as I know.
And then we have Lewis with his little acceptance speech.
Right. So, having seen those pictures now, the first thing that I'd like to do is to give a big thank you to the Hall of Fame. I consider this quite an honor in the game of backgammon. And while I'm thanking people, I really think I must thank Kent Goulding. Without him, I don't think this would be happening. And you may be interested to know that his lovely daughter, who lives in England, is in fact helping me to do the taping at this moment. I would say, if it hadn't been for Kent and the others of the Hall of Fame, I think my career, such as it was, would probably have been confined to what we might call the dustbin of backgammon history. So thanks again. Now, for those of you perhaps who don't know me or were not familiar with my generation, I guess this might be the last time I ever do actually address a backgammon audience. I don't suppose there are many people now who remember all those auctions I used to do. But what I am going to ask you is if perhaps you could indulge an old-timer, just one more reminiscence, and go back to a particular period in my life where backgammon enjoyed what Mike Swobodny has called the golden age of backgammon. Some people call it the jazz age of backgammon, but I lived through it, and I might just tell you a little bit about what happened in those days. And bear in mind, we're all backgammon players, and this is part of our collective past. And talking of the past, I wonder, I know Lee Genud is doing the same as me. I wonder if she's there now. And if she is, I say, hi, Lee. Get ready for a nice trip down memory lane. A lot of this will revive some old memories for you too. I'm quite sure of that. And for the rest of you who don't know, during this period, I can describe Lee in one sentence. Without a doubt, she was the pin-up girl of the backgammon world, and maybe she is still today. So, let me go on now. You all have heard the phrase, living out of a suitcase, haven't you? Well, I can tell you now that that suitcase was in fact my suitcase. A Vuitton, of course. And the way we lived in those days, in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, we were living out of a suitcase. The previous era of backgammon was different. This was the era of Jacoby, of John Crawford and Barclay Cook, the era of Tim Holland. And in those days, backgammon was confined, kind of dusty card rooms in old clubs, everybody chouetting in quiet voices. But that era, I'm happy to say, was coming to an end. And, if you like, the Christopher Columbus of the new era was that old backgammon friend, Prince Obolensky, and he opened new worlds for us, whole new worlds of backgammon. I was a bachelor then, and I can tell you, Louis Vuitton and I went hopping around this new world from board to tournament, and all the time following the click, click, click of the dice. For those of you who are not historically minded, I will tell you that in 1973, there was something called the Arab oil shock. And without going into the details, it meant that thousands upon thousands of people in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq and even Turkey, and particularly in Iran, suddenly they were rich, very rich. And the first thing they did, and I must say I don't blame them because I've been out there a few times, was to leave the dust of the Middle East far behind them, and all of a sudden off they went to London, to California, to the south of France, to Acapulco, all these wonderful places. And you may be sure that a small coterie of friends developed, and would you believe it, we just happened to be in the same place at the same time as these guys from the Middle East. What we found out very soon was two things. Number one, they were all backgammon experts. They were all the best player in their own in their own country, and if 6 or 7 of them came from the same country, it didn't matter. They were all the best players. And if you didn't believe them, you just had to ask them if you wanted confirmation. Secondly, they never played with the cube. So we were very happy to introduce that, but they didn't take the cube very seriously at the beginning. Their idea of taking a double was whether or not it would conform to Inshallah. What was Inshallah? This was the will of Allah. He was going to decide whether or not they taking the double, and in the end they usually took. Now the rest of us, being rather simple souls, tended to let's say we believed a bit more in the mathematics, how many men you had left in the bear-off, all these silly things that didn't mean much to our opponents of the day. So I can tell you that there was a small group of us who used to chase around all the tournaments in different places in the Middle East. We'd run into each other, and we were living what you might call then the backgammon life. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I enjoyed my life. So did all the rest. We were mostly bachelors, so there were no family involvements. It wasn't complicated. In my own case, in 1973, I think it was, I needed to roll a 2 in Las Vegas, and I would have been a world champion at something. Sadly, for once, Allah intervened. Inshallah, it wasn't to be. 50 years later, I can tell you, it still upsets me, believe it or not. So, what you might wonder, how long did this go on? I would say this life lasted for about 15 years. And it was certainly, if nothing else, it was glamorous. We went from Acapulco to Monte Carlo, Saint-Tropez, Paris, Biarritz, and the rest. I mean, it was a great life. But in the midst of all this, I actually peeled off from competing, which perhaps has something to do with why I'm here now. And I entered backgammon management. As Kent, I believe, has already told you, I started in Monte Carlo. That was the first big event I ever did. Fortunately, it was successful. At that moment, I cemented Philip Morris, the Merit brand, as my main sponsor, and found others. I think Kent's given you the list already, where we did backgammon tournaments all around the world. And I worked in, I don't know, in Rio de Janeiro. I did something in the Orient, lots of far out places. There was a Merit series in the Middle East. The life remained the same, but my focus was different. And towards the end, I did a 3-year series in the United States, lots of different venues. And during that time, I spent a winter in California. And the center of backgammon in those days was the Playboy Mansion West. Gasps all around. Yes, I was there, the original cast, and welcomed any night I wanted to go. And any night, of course, was Chouette night. Every night, I should say, Chouette night. There were 2 resident pros. Tom Gilbert was one, Billy Eisenberg the other. But the rest of them were not what we might call the greatest players in America, but they loved gammon. And Hugh Hefner, a person who I may tell you as an aside, for whom I had great respect. He was, to digress a moment, he was a very, very nice, friendly fellow. No pretense to him, and he also had an excellent sense of humor. You read a lot of things about Hef in the press now that he's gone, and most of it is rubbish. I can tell you he was a very worthwhile person. And towards the end of my stay, one night I won a rather complicated back game, and Hef was the victim of this. And he said to me, "Why did you do this and do that?" And in the end, he convinced me to write a book about backgammon, which you may or may not have read. It was called Playboy Book of Backgammon, and Hef, in fact, wrote the foreword. And the part to which I paid the most attention was not the backgammon, which was fairly basic, but the anecdotes that I filled into the narrative in order to try and make it a bit entertaining for the readers who are going to be adults and not school children to be lectured at. Please don't take this as a criticism of Paul McGreal's brilliant book, but of course it is. Even so, it was just another stop and a lot of stops that were fun. However, as we all know, life never stands still, and soon enough I got married and still remain married to my beautiful wife, English wife, Janie Snowden. We've been married over 45 years. She lived through a lot with me, and in the end, towards the end of the 70s, early 80s, we decided to stay permanently in London, and we've lived here in Chelsea ever since, and I don't regret having made that decision, not 1 ounce of regret. However, this is maybe a but and not a regret, but I still, on occasions, dream of those other days, and I still hear the click, click, click of the dice and the laughter and the camaraderie of so many friends. It's an emotional thought for me even now, 40 years later. We had an esprit de corps, and it's the kind of thing that grows up with you, grow up with it, and I feel in a way that was a part of backgammon which should be remembered too. Not just the tournaments, but the life, the laughter, and the little group that we had, I flatter myself, added some of the glamour that's always attached to backgammon, as opposed, let's say, to bridge, to chess, I don't know, to Trivial Pursuit, any game you want to mention. We had it and they didn't. And a lot of the people I'm going to mention in a moment were helped to be responsible for that. You never saw 60 Minutes show a press tournament. You never saw 60 Minutes at bridge, although bridge probably had, at that time, 25 times more players than we did, but we had something they didn't. And if I tell you now, along with Joe Dweck and Jean-Noel Grenda, I guess I'm the last man standing from that group. And before it's too late, I'd like the backgammon players of today, sorry, when I think about this, it can be a little bit emotional, but I'd like you to stand and drink one last toast to all those friends of bygone days. I'm going to try and read this list. Walter Cook, Claude Beer, Tom Gilbert, Stan Herman, my own best pal, Gino Scalamandre, all Americans, and from overseas, Philip Martin, Charles Benson, from London, Moïse Elganian from everywhere, Yannis Zagrafos, a Greek, South African, Peter Bader, and so many more. They all deserve to be remembered in the history of backgammon because they contributed, as I said, something unique to the day. As the poet said of Hamlet, may flights of angels hie thee to thy rest. However, never mind the rest. I would ask the angels if they could just hie my pals to a celestial statuette out there somewhere, I don't know where. That'll suit them just fine. You don't have to go further. As for me now, I guess it's goodbye. Goodbye to backgammon. My journey's over. And I thank you. It's been one great ride. Good night.
Congratulations, Lewis. Congratulations, Lewis. Congratulations, Wilcox. And congratulations, Lee. Well done. That concludes our program for this evening. I would again ask that Lee, Wilcox, your families, Karen, and Kent stick around for some photos. Thanks very much, everyone.